Okay, hello everyone. So for this month's Fearless Fridays interview, I'm here with Joanna Gaudoin. I actually thought I'd interviewed Joanna before because we've been in touch for a few years now about starting up our own businesses, and I featured her on the blog before, but I realised that I hadn't featured her actually on this Fearless Fridays career transition story blog. So I'm really excited to have her here today to talk us through the changes that she's been making. So without further ado, maybe Joanna, you can start by just introducing yourself and telling us what you moved from and to.
Thank you very much for interviewing me today, Anna. It's a great opportunity to talk to everyone. I started my career in the glamorous world of toilet roll, tampons and nappies. Not too glam. That was when I started working for Kimberly-Clark after university. So I started working for them in their Paris office. I only ended up being there 6 months, actually, because as with any big corporate, they have a restructure. And even after 3, they wanted me to come back to the UK, but I managed to push it out to 6. That was a fabulous experience, working in French every day, which was the language I'd studied for many years and done at university. Thoroughly exhausting. Doing marketing in French all day,
Wow.
but great. And then after 6 months, I came back to the UK with them, and the next role I worked in was really the pivotal one. I worked on Andrex, which is obviously a massive in the UK. Had some great opportunities. Spent a lot of time with puppies. Had a brilliant boss who was good at delegating. Yeah, it was fun on puppy shoots, which sounds wrong, but you know what I mean. And then I got to a stage where I was a bit itchy feet. I didn't want to be stuck in Kent, which is where Kimberly-Clark are based in the UK. Well, they're there in Surrey as well, for the rest of my life. And I just thought, I'm going to get stuck in marketing. I've done a broader degree, and I'd sort of ended up in marketing by accident. Mm-hmm. So I just decided I would move to London and do something else. I was spending every weekend in London anyway, camping on various friends' sofas and enjoying the nightlife and other activities there. So I looked at thinking about my life a bit more broad. Consultancy, that's really difficult, especially now. You're not going to manage it. But I pretty much got the first role I went for, so felt very, very fortunate. And a slightly odd role. It wasn't one of the big strategy consultancies. It was a small consultancy with one of the media agencies looking at marketing analytics. And analytics, for anyone that knows me, in terms of statistics and modelling, is not my strong point. But what they wanted me for was to do the brand stuff, to go in and understand the brands, to make sure the insights we were giving with the modelling were relevant and made sense, that actually big companies like Mars Pet Care was a big one I worked with, could actually then use those for something really tangible to drive their business. So I worked there for a year and a half, quite a small team. We had a lot of fun in that time. I also met my now husband there. He sat next to me. So that was all very nice. And then I made a bit of a funny leap. I went and worked for a consultancy that worked in merger and acquisition work, commercial due diligence. I have to admit that was the worst however long of my life. It was a disaster, frying pan and fire with that job. The environment didn't suit me. There wasn't much people contact, very dry. I remember one of my first tasks being, can you estimate the global market for mechanical seals? I didn't even know what a mechanical seal was. I mean, I soon did. They go in lots of things that we all use, but still. Yeah, so I worked there for, I can't remember how long now, probably around a year and a half, I think. Was thinking, what on earth do I do now? And then the market downturn came. And so I had to try and cover up my joy when they told me I was going to be made redundant. So I got paid to leave when I've been thinking about how did I extricate myself from there. I spent 3 months doing a bit of volunteer work, looking for a new role, and then did my final, what I call corporate job, in a small consultancy again that helped companies procuring items for marketing. So it might be about buying print across Europe, across the world. And we did a lot of work on marketing effectiveness. So I was part of a team that built a tool for SAB Miller, who no longer exist, I believe. They've been bought, but used to be based in Woking in Surrey. Was in there a lot building this tool to help them evaluate what activities they should do for their marketing, depending on their objectives and goals. And that was actually quite an enjoyable job. I liked the team. It was a nice location in London. I walked to work most days. It worked very well. And then unfortunately, one of the directors, no one else really rated that much, I don't think. I better be careful because he's still out there somewhere. But anyway, the other 2 or 3 people, directors, decided to split off and do their own thing. And at that point, they couldn't really afford to take the whole team. With sort of going month by month, obviously clients went, not really knowing if we were going to be paid. So that was a very difficult time. And then we ended up being integrated into a business that actually was one of the ones we used to recommend to some clients. So it was a bit weird. We kind of had to change the model of what we did because we weren't impartial anymore. And that was really the point where it crystallised for me that the work wasn't right. There wasn't enough client contact. Work was too conceptual. I felt like we went in, delivered recommendations, and you never know if anything happened with them. Worked with big clients, travelled to Europe working with Toshiba and Syngenta, had some nice, supposedly glamorous trips, but just wasn't for me. So my then boyfriend, now husband, suggested I work with a career coach. And this was a whole new thing for me. I would never really have thought about that because I was probably quite a traditionally minded person. At that point, that was, 6 years ago now, coaching was less of a thing. It wasn't as mainstream as it now is. And I think it's a really good thing that that's changed. And I happened to mention it to a friend, and she said, a couple of my friends have started working, they've worked with this lady, and she's had really good results. So I met her for an initial session. She's called Olivia, and she was excellent, and she was focused on career transitions. Absolutely no clue what I wanted to do. But what she did was she worked with me over 6 months, and she, of course, wasn't there to tell me what to do, but to help me work out what I was good at, what my values were, what I was interested in, through lots of different mechanisms and exercises that I've never done before, visioning and all that sort of thing. And I'd intended to carry on working, but I have to admit, after 2 months, I'd had enough. And one Friday afternoon, I just decided I was going to quit. And I did manage to hold off a few texts from my boyfriend, I think. So just give it the weekend. Just think it through. Make sure you're sure. But on the Monday, I quit. And that was a good decision. And it was quite reassuring because my boss and I were quite friendly with each other. We used to, go for drinks and things. And she said to me, yeah, I don't really feel this role's right for you. And I think she struggled with that, of how she was going to tell me. But she said, I know exactly what you should do. And I said, well, what is it? And she said, well, I'm not going to tell you. She said, you carry on with your career coaching. Yeah, she said, I'll tell you when you finish your career coaching if you haven't come up with something else. Okay. So over the next few months, I did, what did I do? I probably did a bit more volunteering. I did some work for actually the directors that had left. So as a contractor for them, which worked very well. I think I went back to SAB Miller a bit. I had my sister's wedding in the August in Australia, so I knew I was going to be away for a chunk of time then. So finished the coaching probably in the summertime, I think. And really, Olivia was great, but she'd really, when I actually asked her, well, what should I do? She had a few suggestions, but none of them really floated my boat. Although one of them actually, now I know, sort of links into what I'm actually doing. So that was interesting. Then, of course, I went back to my old boss and I was like, right, tell me now. And she was really kind. She printed loads of stuff. And what she came up with is actually a much smaller subset to what I now do, but it sort of started my thinking. And the reason for that, what came out the coaching, was that I really wanted every day to be different. I hated the sitting at a desk 8 till 6, 9 till 6, whatever it might be. So I wanted every day to be different, and I wanted to do something that helped support people to get the development they needed to do what they wanted in their careers. So they were the two really defining things for me. So long story, but then there were lots of backwards and forwards, but I ended up training as an image and impact consultant. That was when I came back from Australia in the autumn, and initially focused on core skills of working with individuals on their own personal impact. So, it might sound superficial, but can make a big difference. Appearance aspects, so colours, styles, adapted to what people need to look like in their role. And of course, that's more of a challenge now. 30 years ago, you go into an office, everyone in a suit, not many women anyway, whereas now that's very different, and there's more of a judgment call to make. So in a way, there's more of a call for it than ever. So I trained in that first, did lots of practicing. I think all of my friends have had a colour consultation at some point. And then later on, the following year, I trained in the corporate skills. So how do you deliver this in a workshop environment? Because clearly you want to try and get corporate work. Corporate environment suits me. And over that time, so I established my business end of 2011. I have really added to that. And now essentially what I do is I help my clients in any scenario in business where they need to encounter other people, make a positive personal impact and build relationships for their own career success, but also business performance. Because if you think about it, lots of people have technical expertise and knowledge, and they are very, very important. They're never not going to be important. Expertise and knowledge. So how you differentiate yourself and make your career more successful and your business more successful is those, I hate the word, but softer skills. How do you engage with people? How do you have an effective consultant that does more than the analytics and the development work that you need? So I now work with people on what I call the core tools of personal impact: appearance, body language and voice. And sometimes people come to me very clearly and say, my body language is an issue, I want to work on that. But a lot of the work I do is around scenarios. So I had a client recently, I was brought in, it was an organisation, let's say you would know very well, public sector actually, which doesn't tend to be where I focus, but this one was. They'd found me online. And this was supposedly about presentation skills, one-to-one with a sort of middle to senior person who'd been through all the typical presentation skills workshops, but really needed one-to-one work. But actually, when I got in there, the work was a lot broader. It was, how does he build relationships with people? How does he not just sit at his desk every day, get on with his work and, not really interact with people? So we were working on lots of other things. So that's the great thing about my job. I never quite know what I'm going to walk into, really, especially one-to-one work. I've got a client who came to me, I've met her at networking actually, so shows the power of networking, last December. And, we got on very well. We had a great chat. We met for lunch in January. I honestly never dreamt she'd become a client. She's sort of middle to senior in a consumer goods company. And then she emailed me about 5-6 weeks ago saying, I know we're due to meet up soon anyway, just for a friendly drink, but I wonder if you can help me. I've had 2 people recently think I'm an intern. And whilst it's lovely to be thought of as young, she said it's not good when it's 2 of the exec team. So she said, I think it's mainly about my clothing, but possibly other things. So we're now working on a programme. We've just finished the appearance aspect, going in depth to what look she does want to create, because it's quite an informal environment, but she's probably gone too informal, and that makes us all look younger. So we've worked through what that needs to look like and started trying to put together that working wardrobe. And next, we've got 3 sessions to look at her body language and voice as well, to make sure she's getting an all-round positive and strong impact, because she is in a really important and fairly senior role. So she does need to interact with very senior people. So my work's pretty diverse. I deliver a lot of workshops. I look after president and vice president of an accounting association, making sure that they can represent that body really well and impactfully. I'm about to go to Germany as part of one expert partner on a big female leadership programme with a cohort of 30 women. So I'll be delivering some live modules in Germany and then some more in Asia later in the year.
Great.
And so, really diverse, interesting work. So hopefully that gives you a very good flavour for the sort of work I do.
Definitely, more than a flavour. Sounds very interesting and very important work as well. Just wanted to pick up, I guess, on the career coaching, because that's quite interesting. And I, of course, work with people too, and I know the sort of tendency of people to want to say, okay, but tell me what I should do. And you do these, and I do it too, you do quizzes and you want them to tell you, like, this is the job that you should do. And it's very interesting to hear those 2 criteria, which actually aren't that specific, right? They're quite broad and doing something different every day, which, as you said, is now being ticked, and then also helping other people develop. That could apply to a whole host of different careers and jobs and roles and companies. So it's just, which makes it difficult in a way, but also easier, because then you have the other considerations. And you mentioned a few of those, I guess, in your career journey in terms of location and colleagues and bosses and all those other factors, I guess. But it's an unfamiliar approach, maybe, as you said, for when we're sort of considering this more linear job title career approach.
Yeah, and having gone to a all girls private school that was very on, sort of one line directionally, and I don't really think I ever thought of anything but a business career, and obviously that's a broad term, when I was at school. And so to suddenly be faced with I have no idea what, and so I suppose my ex-boss's help was really quite pivotal for giving me that idea, and then sort of pursuing that, and the learnings along the way, I mean, developing, and I'm thinking in the future, well, what am I going to focus on? Because actually being an image expert at my age now, in my 30s, works really well, because I'm young enough, but I've got quite a bit of experience under my belt. I've been working 15 years now, and that works well. This might not sound very politically correct, but when I'm in my 50s, I'm not sure it works quite so well for some of the things I do now. So I'm sort of thinking ahead, well, where does this need to go? What do I want to diversify? I think you've continually got to be evaluating how you need to develop yourself and what support you need to do that. I mean, I know I got, during the sort of 5 years or so that I've run my business, SAB Miller actually they asked me to go back as a contractor via the consultancy I did some work for whilst I was working out what to do. And that was meant to be, I think, was it maybe 1 month or 3 months full time, and then a bit of work after that. Well, I ended up back there for 9 months full time, just because of the nature of the project. And that derailed my business slightly. And so at that point, I worked with a business coach, and she really helped me then focus. And that's really helped me with my growth now. And now I'm at another point that I think I need a slightly different amount of help, and I'm going to work with someone different to do that later in the summer. So I think it's, you start off with something, but it's being open to how that's going to grow and develop. And you need to be able to who can support you at different times to get there, because you can't do it all on your own.
No, agree. Yeah, different stages of your business, different types of help, and also, as you said, focusing on your own sort of lifelong development, and not suddenly waking up 20 years later and think, hang on, this is no longer relevant, it doesn't work anymore. So,
definitely. And I read about an app the other day that helps people with presentation skills, and I sort of posted it a bit tongue-in-cheek, I think, through Buffer on social media, saying, oh dear, is this the end of my job? But I just don't think it is. I think people, I do some remote virtual work with people. I've had a client in Edinburgh this year, so obviously that needs to be via Skype. But I think people, for this sort of personal work, do still like face-to-face.
Absolutely.
And
I guess, I mean, it sounds like you've gone through quite a few different changes along the way. This major change now was in 2011, you said. What was the biggest challenge you faced? I guess you've talked about in looking, first of all, for what it was you wanted to do, but then in making that transition also to setting up your own business. What were the difficulties that you faced there?
Definitely not knowing what to do. That was the hardest one by far, as you rightly say. Where to get started, because unlike a lot of people that end up running their own businesses, and I know this isn't the case for you, Anna, you're a bit like me, you're doing something quite different you used to do, but a lot of people just start up a business in the field they were in before. So essentially, I'm not saying it's easy, but they can, they know what they're doing, they know the industry, they can potentially pull a few clients, although they have to be careful with that. But I think the challenge of saying, well, I want to do this, I see the value of it, how do I start telling other people about the value of it, and where do I do that, and how do I get going? And that for me was where I just started networking, and actually that's my challenge at the moment. 80 to 90% of my work, which comes from networking and referrals, which is lovely. It's a great position to be in, but it's really, I realised last year when I had some ill health, it makes it very reliant on you being out there and doing all that, as well as preparing work, delivering work, marketing, admin, all the rest. So one of my challenges now is to look at how do I diminish that and get work from more sources. So that's a sort of long answer to your question, but it just shows what was an initial challenge and then how that's followed through.
And can I ask there, have you considered sort of building your team there to include other people, or is it always going to be just you and your skills?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, my honest answer is no, because I don't really want to employ people, and really people are buying me. There are people out there, I don't think there's anyone that directly competes with everything I do, but there are people that definitely compete with bits of it. And I think people buy a person for this sort of work. An exception to that is I do have associates I can work with. So on the contract with the Accounting Association, I've had a voice coach working with me as well, because the person needed some in-depth work in that area more than I would deliver in that area. So that's been great. She went in, I sort of oversaw it, but she was the week or something working with our clients. And equally, the other thing I can do is if I go and deliver a workshop in the morning and they want short one-to-ones with everyone in the afternoon, which is quite a common pattern for my work in corporate, they might sometimes want them all done in one day, rather than, I say, well, I come in and see people the next 3 days. And if that's the case, I have got people from the company I trained with that I could pull in. So it's not like I'm totally on my own. And in fact, one of those, I've got her as my backup on the big pharmaceutical leadership project, because, if I'm ill or have an accident or something, can't do it, I definitely need a stand-in for that. So it sounds quite arrogant to say, no, it's going to be me. And I know it limits the value of what I'm going to build. I'm never going to build anything to sell. But that's how I want to organise my life at present, I think.
Well, that's what's important, what you want from the business, how it fits into your life. And then, as you said, being an industry or a role where it's so important, that personal image and personal contact, I think that sort of building it around you makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it is. And, I work with people where in their industries, trust is very important. So most of my work is in sectors where people they have a lot of technical knowledge. They really rely on that. So legal, banking, accountancy and actuarial. And so it's about building that trust and that relationship, because that's what I help other people do. As well as the one-to-one work and the workshops, I also speak a lot at conferences, networking events, and that's people are really buying me then for sure. So it feels quite hard. If I employ people, it would be to support, which I do sometimes in the other things that support a business rather than actually the delivery.
And I guess you've mentioned quite a bit of professional support that you've had there, both the sort of the career coach and then business coach at different levels. Where else have you been getting the support, would you say, to make that change and build your business?
I would say I became an associate with a company called Voice at the Table probably 2 or 3 years ago. Again, lady that owns that I'd met previously when she was still in a corporate job, and then she contacted me when she was setting up her own business, and she's a strategy consultancy that focuses on gender diversity. And I deliver some work for her, but also she works with a network of associates, so I don't know how many there are of us now, probably 10 or something, but some of those people have become friends as well and very supportive. So for instance, I trained in a new area this year, positive political intelligence, which is the first bit of work that I now offer that's based on a diagnostic tool, that then we went and work with people to understand how do they relate to people currently in their role, what skills do they need to work on to improve for their career progression, get things done. And, I ran my first sort of tester workshop with that group from Voice at the Table, because I wanted to, test out if it's something they might want for their clients, but also to get their feedback and to just practice. So that's a very supportive group that's very, very helpful to me. Various friends. I've got, another lady actually I know from networking. We're hoping to start a bit of an accountability partnership and talk once a month, and almost say to each other, right, well, my focus is this and I'm going to do this before we next speak. So I think you just find people, I've got loads of friends. It sounds arrogant to say I don't need more friends, but I have made some really good new friends through the networking, and we have really honest conversations about our businesses as well. And I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, fabulous. And it sounds like you're doing really well. You're evolving the business. You're really enjoying it. What would you say the best thing about this new career and work and lifestyle would be?
The aha moment when people get it and they see the impact change can have. So I emailed a client yesterday. I'd only had 3 sessions with him because of the budget allocation. There was quite a lot to work on, so we really sort of had to hone it down to the key things. I said, how are things going? I emailed both him and his boss separately, And I got an email back from her saying, oh yes, he presented something yesterday, it was so much better than before, etc., etc. And he said, oh yes, I presented yesterday, I think it went well, I'm using all the techniques you taught me. So that is really amazing, when you really see the impact you can have on someone's life. And I think the ability to organise your own time. You know, I think it was it last Friday when it was a particularly, no, it's the Friday before last, particularly lovely afternoon. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go out and do 2 hours gardening, and I'll pick up my work over the weekend when it's going to rain. You know, so the ability to do that, and just enjoy your life a bit more. I mean, I think certainly the generation behind me is far more focused on that than our generation was. They're thinking more about, well, work has to just fit this. And I think that's starting to have an impact on the older generations too. We're all thinking, well, yes, we're not going to lie on our deathbed thinking, oh yeah, I wish I'd done a bit more work.
Never.
So it's balancing, you know, doing work you enjoy, obviously earning what you need to live the life you want, but also, you know, I've got an elderly nan, she's 91. If, you know, I decide I'm going to go and pop and see her, then I will. You know, it's just which you can't do in a full-time job. You know, support a friend if they have a crisis, you know, you can pop over and do that and pick up your work later. So I think that flexibility.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess to close then, what advice would you give to someone who's maybe considering that change, who's in that position that you were, that you know that you don't want to do this, but you know, don't know what to do next? What would you advise them?
Definitely get some support, some external support. I mean, friends can be helpful. I think just getting that is really important from a third party perspective, because whilst friends can be helpful and family, they almost know you too well. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I haven't never asked my parents straight out, but I think they were pretty horrified when I told them what I was going to do.
Okay.
I think they were really worried. They're like, you're joking, you're chucking a job to do what? You know, I must ask them that actually. So I think getting the right third party support. About what's your model for starting up. I mean, I was very fortunate. I'd sold a flat when I was younger, and so when I started my coaching, I actually didn't have to work. I had a few months where I had some savings to live on, and I think if you can do that and throw yourself full on into it, that is honestly the best way, because otherwise I've heard other people, they just don't end up doing it because you're doing a full-time job, you can't get it to work well. So just think about what's realistic for you, because you don't want to end up it being a massive stress, and you know, it drives you into health wise into a place you don't want to be in. So I think very carefully about that. They're the two main things: how the model going to work and getting the right support. And, you know, for training as well, I mean, I did do formal training for what I do, and that's really important to me that I've got that. But I think sometimes people almost spend too long getting all the right training in order and not actually getting going with anything. And I've found adding things as I go along has worked much better for me, rather than trying to do the whole suite of things and taking long over that, spending loads of money, and then actually it takes you longer to get going and you've got more stuff to offer. So I think really focus on, well, let's start with this and, you know, build from there.
That's great advice. I think whether it's your website or, you know, we were talking before about, you know, doing webinars and writing articles and speaking and training and then getting the formal certifications, that's expensive, it's time consuming, and you might be going off in the wrong direction, right, for you and for the business. So
yeah, you might. And I think, you know, perfectionism can be a problem, but I think it's Pareto's law, isn't it, that says 80. And, you know, I have people that even now say, oh yeah, I must write some blogs, but, you know, it takes me a day to write a blog. And I say to them, my goodness, you know, I mean, it used to take me a lot longer, but I've now got it down to I can write a blog in probably 20 minutes on the tube, in my notes on my phone. Just write something. If you've got an idea, just get writing and sort it out later, tidy it up a bit and get it out there. You know, really to spend a day writing a blog, you know, it's just not worth it. So think very carefully about how time is spent. Ongoing is important, because it's easy to lose time doing stuff that's really not going to do anything for you. Well,
done is better than perfect, they say, right? So either just do it as you said, or choose not to do it and be free of that obligation, because otherwise you're just in that same kind of dilemma you were in before at work, people telling you what to do, right? So
yeah, definitely. I mean, I've not been on it, but Voice at the Table run a workshop for women on done is better than perfect.
Oh, there you go then. So that might be useful for some people. Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and some great advice there
Very
at the end
welcome.
as well. Where can we find you online if we want to find out more about your important work?
Well, I'm easy to find because I think I'm the only person on the planet with my name.
Lucky you.
So
I don't have that unique
no, before I got married, I didn't. I was common as. I think there were 32 pages of our surname just in our area alone. But now I believe I'm the only Joanna Gaudoin, or Gaudoin, as you say it properly, the French way. So that if you Google me, I put a lot of articles on LinkedIn. So if you find me on there, there's lots there. And if you send me a note, I'm very happy to connect. And then my website, which is insideoutimage.co.uk. And then I do quite a bit on Twitter, quite a few articles there, and Facebook, and then have some presence on Instagram, but mainly Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
That's some great last minute advice there too. So get married so that you get a unique search optimized name.
I plan that.
I'll put that on my list. Great. Well, thank you so much again for your time, Joanna, and best of luck with the next stage of your business.
Thanks very much, Anna. Bye-bye.